Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Process. I'm going to be honest with you guys, this morning has kind of been a little bit crazy. When you have like a perfect plan of how the day is going to go, and you wake up and you're like, yep, this is all going to just perfectly go to plan, and everything's going to be great, and I'm going to have an amazing morning. That's how I started the day. And then everything kind of fell apart. Just my dog barking, my baby crying, things falling down and apart and breaking, and all of it. All of it happened all at once. And it really messed with my head. I was really excited to record this episode this morning. Was going to do it first thing. And then I realized that I was not in the right headspace after all of that. So I needed to step away and reset a little bit. I just did a whole bunch of jumps. I just moved around. I got outside and I am feeling better. And I really, really want to talk about language today because, as you may know, if you've listened to previous episodes, it is something that I am extremely passionate about, not learning about different languages. I mean, actually, I really do enjoy that as well. But what I'm talking about here is how powerful the words that we use are. The way that we use words shapes how we perceive whatever it is that we're talking about. It shapes the way that we then perceive our experience. And ultimately, it shapes the way that we perceive our reality, the way that we move through the world, and the lens that we almost have in front of our eyes of how we view things and how we react to things and how we respond and move through challenges and all of that kind of stuff. I'm absolutely obsessed with that. I think it's incredible how a small shift in your language can completely change how you show up and how you see something. And whenever I notice that, I really make a conscious effort to dig into it a little bit deeper and figure out, well, what is that about? Like, why is that creating a different feeling in my body? Or why does that make me feel differently about whatever the environment is or the context is? And the word that I want to talk about today is experiment. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I was sending a voice clip to one of my friends a couple of days ago, and I was talking about practicing, and I was talking about putting in the reps and making mistakes, and how for me, for most of my life, I did everything in my power to avoid making a mistake because I had this very clear connection between a mistake and my self-worth. In that, if I made a mistake, it directly impacted who I thought I was and how I saw myself. And if you can imagine that story really running my life, it got me into situations where I would avoid trying new things, or I would avoid taking a risk. I would avoid doing something if I didn't know before I started that it was going to go well, or that I already basically knew what the outcome was going to be before I tried. That was often the way that I moved through the world because of this word, the weight that the word mistake or failure or just any kind of thing where I wasn't getting it right. If it wasn't right, it was wrong. And I've talked about this before with the black and white thinking. This has been a really, really big learning curve for me over the past 5 or so years, I would say, since I've like started getting really intentional about it. And so a couple of days ago, I was talking about this, and she had given an example of how someone who is a runner who's really good at running might not engage in any other sports because they want to be good at that sport right away, and they might think that they're not going to be, so then they don't even try. And as she was saying that, I was thinking about myself and how that was essentially how I lived my life for all of my childhood, essentially, and even into my early adulthood, where I really craved and needed that sense of certainty before I even started doing something. I needed to know what the outcome was going to be. And so the reason why I want to talk about the word experiment is because I used that word when I was talking about this, and I used how I was looking at something as an experiment instead of looking at it as, I need to know what the outcome is. I need to know that it's right or wrong. And as soon as I said it, I felt a shift in my body. I felt my shoulders loosen a little bit. They were a little bit less tense. I felt almost like my posture shifted from one word. And I almost said it as like a throwaway, like just as I was talking. But because I'm really interested in language and I'm noticing it so much more, I notice myself react in the moment. And I had to kind of stop and talk about it. And so that's why I wanted to capture it here as well, because it's one word. But let's break down what this word experiment actually means. When I hear the word experiment, I immediately think of science. I can basically visualize the science area at my high school, which was like this big, massive area with lots of tables and space for us to do the science experiments and everything. And I also think about having a hypothesis that you're either wanting to prove or disprove. So you have an idea of what is going to be, what you think is correct and what you think is going to happen. But inherently, an experiment is you don't actually know. You can't possibly know the outcome, and you have to do the experiment to find out. And you might not even get the full outcome from doing the experiment, but it's going to give you some sort of data or information that's going to be able to then help you continue doing the experiment and continue learning and moving through that. And so that's what the word experiment means to me. It makes me think of science, and it makes me think of how it is a process. It inherently is a way that you take variables and you shift them and you change them and manipulate them to see what will happen. So you might pour two substances together and, get a big explosion and then go, okay, well, I'm going to try this different substance instead and see what happens next time. And it's so interesting to me to think about how that exists and how we use that. And we could see that, I can see that so clearly within science. But then in my own life, I really struggled to see how trying something new or taking on a task or a skill that I wasn't good at or have never done before, seeing that as an experiment is a totally different experience in my body. Instead of going straight to judgment around, is it going to be right or is it going to be wrong? Instead of that, I'm now looking at it as, okay, what can I do? What variable can I manipulate? What can I change or adjust slightly to see then what will happen? And that has been really how I've approached this content creation journey, has been like an experiment. I hadn't put the word to it yet until a couple of days ago, but that's essentially what it is. I'm posting on Instagram every day. I'm trying new things. I'm seeing if I can use hooks or maybe move the camera in a certain way to see if that helps based on, what I'm seeing other people do, and just trying to keep that authentic and right for me, and obviously not over editing or polishing or any of that, because that's also part of the experiment for me is being able to go, okay, this has been my way of operating for the last however many years, basically my whole life has been to plan and polish and make it into this like perfect circle. Like I'm like taking the dough or the clay and I'm making it into the perfect shape before I put it out into the world and let anyone see it. That has been my default way of operating. Whereas now I've had to swing completely as far to the other side of the pendulum as I possibly can, where I am basically just like clumping something together and throwing it out and seeing what happens. Because the more that way, instead of spending all of my time prepping and planning and polishing, I am just executing. I am just moving. I am consistently putting out a rep, putting out a rep, putting out a rep, and experimenting and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, seeing what's resonating with people or what they're enjoying, or even not just for them, but for myself. Like, what am I enjoying talking about and what makes sense to me and what's helpful for me to articulate out loud and to share? And all of that is just me consistently experimenting and then making those minor adjustments and continuing to move forward. So when I said that word the other day, it was like this feeling of relief almost, because it was as though I was letting go of the need to be certain, of the need to know what the outcome is, and trusting that the way that I am actually going to get the data and the information that I need is by doing the experiment, is by taking something and putting it out into the universe and seeing what happens, and then observing that instead of looking at that with, okay, I did that right or I did that wrong, I messed that up, that's so embarrassing, that's so cringy, that's so whatever. I can look at it and go, okay, interesting. This was the result. People didn't really react to this or whatever. And I'm, to be fair, to be honest with you, I'm not tracking metrics at all right now. It is all about execution for me because I know that my brain still needs more practice in rewiring this system. I am so innately wired to go back to that planning and that overanalyzing that if I spend even a little bit of time straying away from keeping this experiment authentic and real and raw and unpolished, if I stray from that even a little bit, my brain just goes zoop straight back into the way that I used to operate. And so I'm not quite there yet. Honestly, I'm needing to continue just pushing myself to put this content out and to be okay with it not being perfect, because that's giving me the reps that I need. And that's giving me an opportunity to really lean into what it means to experiment and what it means to let go of certainty, accept that uncertainty is actually the way of learning. You have to be willing to be uncertain to get yourself to take a risk, to get yourself out of your zone of comfort and to step into a place that is unfamiliar and that is scary and that you don't know exactly what's going to happen or how it's going to land or what it's going to look like, but trusting the process and trusting that with repetition, with reflection, with analysis, not too much analysis, you will get better and you will get more attuned to your own way of doing whatever the task is. So I'm talking about content creation right now, but this could be applied to anything, any skill or idea or task that you are thinking about wanting to try or start, but there's this sense of it needing to be based around the outcome of needing to know that it's going to go well, or you have a story that it's not going to go well, so then you just don't even give it a go to start with because you're so worried about what's probably going to happen, right? And even then, you might not even be right about what you're thinking is going to happen. But this is a way to be able to, instead of looking at it like through a lens of judgment, you can look at it as though you're a scientist, as though you're going, I wonder if I tried this, I wonder if I signed up for tennis lessons and I signed up for 10 lessons for a term. And I wonder if I could get better at my serve, right? And so instead of going, oh God, I've got such a bad serve. That's why I don't play tennis, because I have a bad serve. That's outcome based, right? I am bad. I am not good. It's like a fixed identity around tennis. Instead of that, going, okay, well, I'm going to sign up for 10 lessons and I'm going to see, I wonder if I got lessons from an instructor, if I could get my serve to be 5% better or 10% better. Or I wonder if maybe I could learn how to do a backhand serve. I don't know much about tennis, so I'm sorry to any tennis experts out there if I'm not talking about this correctly, but I'm pretty sure you can do a backhand serve. Anyway, the concept is the same, regardless of whatever area, genre, whatever it is that you're wanting to apply it to. Instead of being like a judge, step into that space like a scientist. What is one variable that you could adjust or manipulate to see then how the outcome could shift or change, and then do it again and do it again. And by doing that process over and over again, your body starts to relax a little bit and get used to this feeling of uncertainty, and actually enjoying the fact that you're going to be able to learn through the experimentation. And you might not even learn what you think you're going to learn. I think for me, like if I come back to this idea of content creation and putting myself out there, it has been really interesting to observe myself and to see where my blocks are and where I get nervous or unsure of myself, or where I feel like I start to shift away from that lens of experimentation and find myself falling back into that role of judge. And a lot of the times for me, it's around when I start to plan or prep too much. If I try to put a certain structure on how I want to talk about something, if I try to give myself a list of things that I'm going to talk about, or give myself the specific story that I'm going to share before I do it, that ends up messing with my ability to speak authentically and just show up as I am, as thoughts kind of come to me, essentially just my stream of consciousness, which is what you're listening to right now. For me, I have to let that lead the way right now as I am learning this new skill. I have spent the last 4 or 5 years learning about this stuff privately and in one-on-one conversations, and I have developed the skill of being able to articulate myself one-on-one, whether that's through texting or through emails or through on the phone, voice clips, whatever. I have really worked on shaping that skill and being able to help people through different elements of whatever it is that they're working on. But the next level for me is to do this publicly, is to be able to have this same level of authenticity and let myself get into this flow state and experiment with what's going to come up, and how am I going to work through when I have like a block in real time, and how am I going to get myself back on track, or do it, what even is on track, like, do I need to have a specific way that I talk about things, or can I just show up and do it as myself and that be great, as is? And it's been awesome for me to lean into that. And finally, it's as though I'm really shedding that last bit of that old identity of myself, where it was all outcome based and it was all hinged on whether something was good or bad. And there was very little nuance or space in between those two dualities. Whereas now, and especially with this word experiment, it feels so open and expansive, and like there's all these possibilities, all these different ways that it could go. And that now feels exciting to me instead of scary, instead of, terrifying, where I would almost feel like my whole body constrict, and like just so much fear around, well, I don't know what's going to happen. And so how am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to even start when I don't know how it's going to go? That version of me and that story is really starting to fade into the background the more that I do this, and the more that I experiment, the more that I show up and let myself practice openly, honestly, and publicly. It is allowing me to really lean into this role of scientist. And I wanted to share that today because I think that it is going to continue to come up in my life, where I come across something where I still have that story that sits in the background, because I don't think it ever fully goes away. I think that we just get better at, if we're, really being intentional about it, we get better at being able to pick up on it, and we get better at being able to listen to it, acknowledge it, make space for it, and then go, thank you for how you've served me in the past, but I have a different direction that I'm moving in now. And so I'm going to actively shift this and go in a different direction. And so I am actively looking for ways that I can practice shifting my mindset from judge to scientist. When I make a mistake, or when I do something that didn't turn out exactly as I wanted to, which I know is similar to a mistake, but it can be different because not everything is a mistake. I would actually argue that a lot of times mistakes are just lessons. They're just ways for us to find out more information about ourselves or about the situation so that we can make a better decision. And again, look, even me saying that, I can feel how different, oh God, I can feel how much better that feels in my body to go, hang on, it doesn't have to be a mistake. A mistake is a lesson. A mistake is something where you are getting to learn either the way that you maybe don't want to do that next time, or how you're going to adjust. Because again, it's all an experiment, it's all part of the process. So I hope that that was helpful. I hope that there's at least some part of that resonated with you. If there has been, I would love to hear about it. I would love for you to share that with me. You can DM me on Instagram, leave a comment on the YouTube video, and I would, love to have a conversation about you with you about this, because I think that our words are just this incredible way for us to shift how we see ourselves, which is then going to shift how we talk to ourselves, and then ultimately the decisions that we make and how our life turns out. And that's super empowering. I think it can be scary knowing how much power our language holds. But if we can shift that again to go, that's really empowering, because I can use this again as an experiment to see what word could I change instead of saying mistake, like I just did live on this recording. What other words could I change to something else that's going to create a different feeling in my body, and is going to create a different opportunity for me to move through this experience in a different way. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment, leave a review on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, so that we can get this show out to more people. I am so appreciative of every single one of you. Thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.